Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull is proposing new laws to force technology and social media companies to decrypt messages from suspected terrorists or paedophiles. The new laws would force companies like Google and Facebook to help Australian security agencies read and access messages from suspected criminal networks.
But just how this would be achieved remains unclear, with some experts warning that attempts to access encrypted messages may be futile. Among them is Dr. Robert Merkel, a lecturer in software engineering at Monash University in Melbourne. Robert Merkel, thanks very much for joining us this morning. Now, the government has argued that it's not asking tech companies to create a so-called backdoor or a flaw in their software to help them unlock that encrypted messages. In your view, though, is it possible to access encrypted messages without creating some sort of flaw?
In short, no, it's not possible, or at least highly unlikely to be possible, without deliberately inserting some kind of backdoor in some part of the system.
So you're saying there's simply no other way of doing it, even if they throw a whole lot of ingenuity and resources at it to try and crack a code, they can't do it?
Well, in essence, academic cryptographers, people who are paid to think about these problems and think about nothing else for decades on end, have been looking for ways to break this kind of encryption, and they have not succeeded. The methods used in end-to-end encryption apps are, for all practical purposes, unbreakable.
Just explain to us end-to-end encryption apps, how they work.
Well, okay, to start with, encryption is something that's built into every web browser. So most of the time when you look on a web page on the internet, for instance, your webmail, the content of that page is scrambled between the server run by Google or Facebook or whomever and your browser. The difference with end-to-end encryption is that a message which is being sent between you and a recipient, a friend, a business colleague, whatever, it's scrambled at your end and it's only decrypted at the other end in the messaging app, so that Facebook or Google or whomever it is never see the unscrambled message. They have no access to the key that was used to scramble the message or descramble the message. So essentially there is no way that, without changing the messaging app or the system that it runs on, that access can be granted.
Other than you're saying that if you reduced or restricted the number of keys used to generate those messages, then you may have a greater chance.
Well, yes, that is one way in which you could make it possible for governments to access those messages, but in the process you might also make it possible for other parties, other governments, other organisations to break those messages. It used to be that governments, and particularly Western governments, had a practical monopoly on very large amounts of computing power. That's no longer the case today. Anyone can buy or rent computer time on as many computers as you want.
The government says it's consulted with its British counterparts who maintain that this is possible. But I would imagine, given the field you're in, that the Australian government at least may have consulted you or some of your colleagues. Is that the case?
Well, it's not surprising they didn't consult me, but I am surprised that they came out with the announcement they did today. It doesn't show a lot of evidence of wide consultation, I'd say.
So, as I said, they have consulted with their British counterparts. Any evidence in the UK from some of your contemporaries there that they have given the British government an idea that this is possible?
So there has been some speculation about what the British government and the Australian government might be seeking. And what they may be seeking, rather than to break the app itself, they may be seeking access to a backdoor into your phone. So once the message is, well, into suspects' phones. So rather than trying to break the message while it's in transit, they will just wait for the messages to be unscrambled on the phone, and they will have software surreptitiously installed on a suspect's phone that will report the content of that message and report that back to the government.
Yeah, that point has been made, that perhaps we're missing the point here, that it's not about trying to unscramble those encrypted messages. As you say, it's once it's reached the device, then you can access it because it's already obviously in a readable form, which would mean, as you say, either trying to access that device or in fact actually physically having that device.
Well, it's long known that, and it's routinely known that governments, after getting warrants, have technologies to get access to at least the contents of some mobile phones, including the contents of encrypted messages. But that is somewhat limited because the way the apps are designed, they can delete the messages once they've been received, and once they have been deleted, they can be deleted in such a way that there is no feasible way to retrieve them.
So as the laws that they're proposing have been presented, your understanding of it, does this perhaps jeopardise internet security in its current form, and even jeopardise perhaps some of those apps such as WhatsApp that are there for that end-to-end encryption?
It does pose some non-trivial risks to the broader security of the internet, because so let's assume for a moment that their plan is to put, and I'll use the term backdoor because it's how it's generally used in the industry, put the ability to put a backdoor on a targeted smartphone. The problem with this is that once you create that backdoor, there is always a risk that somebody else will figure out how to open that backdoor. And we've seen in the past that backdoors created for a variety of purposes have been accessed by hackers, criminals, and misused. So that is a serious concern with this kind of policy, aside from the broader issues of under what circumstances that backdoor can be accessed, what this means for internet users in perhaps other countries if sort of mandated access to smartphones happens in countries such as Australia with rule of law and functioning courts. What about places where this is not the case? And so there are serious concerns. But in the Australian context, I think what we should be most worried about is how can we be confident that any such backdoor created won't be exploited by others?
Well, no doubt this will be debated by our lawmakers in the coming months. Dr. Robert Merkel from Monash University, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.